To begin at the beginning.
Yeah, looking forward to then, or just starting looking at the camera? Okay.
So, we're up to speed, nice and quiet though, please. Okay, stand by, studio 5, 4, 3.
To begin at the beginning, it is spring. Moonless night in the small town, starless, Bible black. The cobble streets silent, and the hunched quarters and rabbits wood limping invisible down to the slow black, crow black, fishing boat bobbing sea. The houses are blind as moles, though moles see fine tonight in the snouting velvet dingles. Blind as Captain Cat, there in the muffled middle by the pump and the town clock. The shops in mourning, the welfare hall in widow's weeds. And all the people of the lulled and dumbfound town are sleeping now. Hush, the babies are sleeping. The farmers, the fishers, the tradesmen and pensioners, cobbler, school teacher, postman and publican, the undertaker and the fancy woman, drunkard, dressmaker, preacher, policeman, the web-foot cockle women, and the tidy wives.
You can
hear the dew falling and the hushed town breathing. Only your eyes are unclosed to see the black and folded town fast and slow asleep. And you alone can hear the invisible starfall. The darkest before dawn, minutely dew-grazed stir of the black, dab-filled sea where the Arethusa, the curlew and the skylark, Zanzibar, Rhiannon, the rover, the cormorant, and the Star of Wales tilt and ride. Listen.
Listen.
It is night moving in the streets. The processional, salt-slow, musical wind in Coronation Street and Cockle Row. It is the grass growing on Llaregib Hill. Dew fall, star fall. The sleep of birds in Milkwood. Look, it is night, dumbly, royally winding through the Coronation cherry trees, going through the graveyard of Bethesda with winds gloved and folded, and dew doffed tumbling by the sailors' arms. Time passes. Listen. Time passes. Come closer now.
Come closer now.
In the slow, deep, salt and silent black bandaged night. Only you can see in the blinded bedrooms the combs and petticoats over the chairs, the jugs and basins, the glasses of teeth, thou shalt not on the wall, and the yellowing, dicky-bird watching pictures of the dead. Only you can hear and see, behind the eyes of the sleepers, the movements and countries and mazes and colors and dismays and rainbows and tunes and wishes and flight and fall and despairs and big seas of their dreams. From where you are, you can hear their dreams.
Captain Cat, the retired blind sea captain asleep in his bunk in the seashelled shipping bottle, ship-shaped best cabin of schooner house, dreams of.
Never such seas as any that swamped the decks of his SS Kidwelly, bellying over the bedclothes and jellyfish slippery, sucking him down salt deep into the Davy dark, with a fish come biting out and nibble him down to his wishbone, and the long drowned nuzzle up to him.
Remember me, Captain?
You're Dancy Williams.
I lost my step in Nantucket.
Do you see me, Captain? The white bone talking. I'm Tom Fred, the donkey man. We shared the same girl once. Her name was Mrs. Probert.
Rosie Probert. 33 Duck Lane. Come on up, boys. I'm dead.
Hold me, Captain. I'm Jonah Jarvis. Coming to a bad end. Very enjoyable.
This skull at your ear hole is?
Curly Bevan. Tell my auntie it was me who pawned the Ormolu clock.
Aye, aye, Curly. Tell my missus, no, I never.
I never done what she said I never.
Yes, they did.
How's it above?
Is there rum and lava bread?
Bosoms and robins.
Concertinas.
Ebenezer's bell.
Fighting and onions.
And sparrows and daisies?
Tiddlers in a jam jar.
Buttermilk and whippets.
Rockabye baby.
Washing on the line.
And old girls in the snug?
How's the tenors in Dolice?
Who milks the cows in my squin?
When she smiles, is there dimples?
What's the smell of parsley? Oh, my dead dears.
From where you are, you can hear in Cockle Row in the spring moonless night Miss Pryce, dressmaker and sweet shop keeper, dream of
A lover, tall as the town clock tower, Samson syrup gold-maned, whacking thighed and piping hot, thunderbolt based and barnacle-breasted, flailing up the cockles with his eyes like blow lamps, and scooping low over her lonely, loving, hot water bottle body.
Mavanwy Pryce.
Mr. Morg Edwards.
I am a draper mad with love. I love you more than all the flannelette and calico, candlewick, dimity, crash and merino, tussore, creton, crepon, muslin, poplin, ticking and twill in the whole cloth hall of the world. I have come to take you away to my emporium on the hill where the change hums on wires. Throw away your little bed socks and your Welsh wool knitted jacket. I will warm the sheets like an electric toaster. I will lie by your side like the Sunday roast.
I will knit you a wallet of forget-me-not blue for the money to be comfy. I will warm your heart by the fire so you can slip it in under your vest when the shop is closed.
Oh, Mavanwy, Mavanwy, before the mice gnaw at your bottom drawer, will you say?
Yes, Morg. Yes, Morg. Yes, yes, yes.
And all the bells of the tills of the town shall ring for our wedding.
Heaven's the death, the undertaker. Laughs high and aloud in his sleep and curls up his toes as he sees. Upon waking 50 years ago, snow lied deep on the goose field behind the sleeping house. And he runs out into the field where his mother is making Welsh cakes in the snow and steals a fistful of snowflakes and currants and climbs back to bed to eat them cold and sweet under the warm, white clothes, while his mother dances in the snow kitchen, crying out for her lost currants.
And in the little pink-eyed cottage next to the undertaker's lie alone the 17 snoring gentle stone of Mr. Waldo. Rabbit catcher, barber, herbalist, cat doctor, quack. His fat pink hands palm up over the edge of the patchwork quilt. His black boots neat and tidy in the washing basin. His bowler on a nail above the bed. A milk stout and a slice of cold bread pudding under the pillow. And dripping in the dark, he dreams of...
Waldo! Waldo! What'll the neighbours say? What'll the neighbours?
Poor Mrs. Waldo.
What she puts up with.
Never should have married.
If she didn't have to.
Same as her mother.
And there's her husband for you.
Bad as his father.
You know where he ended?
Up in the asylum.
Crying for his ma.
Every Sunday.
He ain't got a leg.
And carrying on.
With that Mrs. B.T. Morris.
Up in the quarry.
You seen her baby?
He's got his nose.
Oh, it makes my heart bleed.
What he'll do for drink.
He sold the pianola.
And a sewing machine.
Falling in the gutter.
Talking to the lamppost.
Using language.
Singing in the W.
Poor Mrs. Waldo.
Waldo! Waldo!
Yes, how are, ma'am?
What'll the neighbours say? What'll the neighbours?
Black as a chimbley, ringing doorbells, breaking windows, making mud pies, stealing currants,
Talking words.
saw him in the bushes,
Playing muchins.
sent him to bed without any supper,
Give him cenopods and lock him in the dark.
off to the reformatory.
Off to the reformatory. Learning with a slipper on his BTM.
Now, in her iceberg white, holily laundered crinoline nightgown, under virtuous polar sheets, in her spruced and scoured, dustifying bedroom, in trig and trim bay view, a house for paying guests at the top of the town, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard, widow twice of Mr. Ogmore, linoleum retired, and Mr. Pritchard, failed bookmaker, who, maddened by besoming, swabbing and scrubbing, the voice of the vacuum cleaner, the fume of polish, ironically swallowed disinfectant, fidgets in her rinsed sleep, wakes in a dream, and nudges in the ribs dead Mr. Ogmore, dead Mr. Pritchard, ghostly on either side.
Mr. Ogmore, Mr. Pritchard, it is time to inhale your balsam.
Oh, Mrs. Ogmore.
Oh, Mrs. Pritchard.
Soon it will be time to get up. Tell me your tasks, in order.
I must put my pyjamas in the drawer marked pyjamas.
I must take my cold bath, which is good for me.
I must wear my flannel band to ward off sciatica.
I must dress behind the curtain and put on my apron.
I must blow my nose.
In the garden, if you please.
In a piece of tissue paper, which I afterwards burn.
I must take my salts, which are nature's friend.
I must boil the drinking water, because of germs.
I must make my herb tea, which is free from tannin.
And have a charcoal biscuit, which is good for me.
I may smoke 1 pipe of asthma mixture.
The woodshed, if you please.
And dust the parlour. And spray the canary.
I must put on rubber gloves and search the peak for fleas.
I must dust the blinds, and then I must raise them.
And before you let the sun in, mind it wipes its shoes.
Mrs. Rose Cottage's eldest, May, peels off her pink and white skin in a furnace, in a tower, in a cave, in a waterfall, in a wood, and waits there, raw as an onion, for Mr. Wright to leap up the burning, tall, hollow splashes of leaves like a brilliantine trout. Call me Dolores, like they do in the stories.
And the inspectors of cruelty fly down into Mrs. Butcher Bynan's dream to persecute Mr. Bynan for selling owl meat, dog's eyes, man chop. Mr. Bynan in Butcher's bloodied apron, spring heels down Coronation Street. A finger, not his own, in his mouth. Straight-faced in his cunning sleep, he pulls the legs of his dreams, and hunting on pigback, shoots down the wild giblets.
And in Coronation Street, which you alone can see, it is so dark under the chapel in the skies, the Reverend Eli Jenkins, poet, preacher, turns in his deep towards dawn sleep and dreams of...
Eisteddfodau.
He intricately rhymes the music of Cruth and Pipgorn all night long in his druid seedy nighty. in a beer tent, black with Pryce.
Mr. Pugh, schoolmaster, fathoms asleep, pretends to be sleeping, spies foxy round the droop of his nightcap and, psst, whistles up.
Murder.
Marianne the Sailor's dreams of the Garden of Eden. She comes in her smock frock and clogs, away from the cool, scrubbed, cobbled kitchen with the Sunday school pictures on the whitewashed wall and the farmer's almanac hung above the settle and the sides of bacon on the ceiling hooks, and goes down the cockle-shelled paths of that apple pie kitchen garden, ducking under the Jipper's clothes pegs, catching her apron on the blackcurrant bushes, past bean rows and onion bed and tomatoes ripening on the wall, towards the old man playing the harmonium in the orchard, and sits down on the grass at his side and shells the green peas that grow up through the lap of her frock that brushes the dew.
Time passes. Listen. Time passes. An owl flies home past Bethesda to a chapel in an oak, and the dawn inches up. The principality of the sky lightens now, over our green hill, into spring morning, larked and crowed and belly.
Stand on this hill. This is Llaregib Hill. Old as the hills, high, cool and green. And from this small circle of stones, made not by druids, but by Mrs. Bainan's Billy, you can see all the town below you, sleeping in the first of the dawn. You can hear the lovesick wood pigeons mooning in bed. A dog barks in his sleep, farmyards away. The town ripples like a lake in the waking haze.
Who pulls the town hall bell rope but blind Captain Cat? One by one the sleepers are wrung out to sleep this one morning, as every morning, and soon you shall see the chimney slow, up flying snow, as Captain Cat, in sailor's cap and sea boots, announces today with his loud get-out-of-bed bell.
Now, woken at last by the out-of-bed sleepyhead, Polly put the kettle on town hall bell. Lily Smalls, Mrs. Bainan's treasure, comes downstairs from a dream of royalty, who all night long went larking with her full of sauce in the Milkwood dark, and puts the kettle on the primus in Mrs. Bainan's kitchen, and looks at herself in Mr. Bainan's shaving glass over the sink, and sees...
Oh, there's a face. Where you get that hair from? Got it from an old tomcat. Give it back then, love. Oh, there's a perm. Where you get that nose from, Lily? Got it from my father, silly. Got it on upside down. Oh, there's a conch. Look at your complexion. Oh, you look. Needs a bit of makeup. Needs a veil. Oh, there's glamour. Where you get that smile, Lil? Never you mind, girl. Nobody loves you. That's what you think. Who is it loves you? Chantel. Oh, come on, Lily. Cross your heart, then. Cross my heart.
Lily!
Yes, Mum?
Where's my tea, girl?
Where do you think? In the cat box. Coming up, Mum!
Mr. Pugh, in the schoolhouse opposite, takes up the morning tea to Mrs. Pugh and whispers on the stairs,
"Here's your arsenic, dear, and your weed killer biscuit. I've throttled your parakeet. I've spat in the vases. I've put cheese in the mouse holes. Here's your... Nice tea, dear.
Too much sugar.
You haven't tasted it yet, dear.
Too much milk, then. Give me my glasses. No, not my reading glasses. I want to look out. I want to see.
Organ Morgan at his bedroom window playing chords on the sill to the morning fishwife girls who, heckling over Donkey Street, observe.
Me, dye bread, hurry into the bakery, pushing in my shirt tails, buttoning my waistcoat. Ping goes a button. Why can't I sew 'em? No time for breakfast. Nothing for breakfast. There's wives here.
Me, Mrs. Dyebread 1, capped and shawled and no old corset. Nice to be comfy, nice to be nice, clogging on the cobbles to stir up a neighbour. Oh, Mrs. Sarah, can you spare a loaf, love? Dyebread forgot the bread.
Me, Mrs. Dyebread 2. Gypsies to kill in a silky scarlet petticoat above my knees. Dirty, pretty knees. See my body through my petticoat brown as a berry. High-heel shoes with one heel missing. Tortoiseshell comb in my bright, black, slinky hair. Nothing else at all but a dab of scent. Lolling gaudy at the doorway. Tell your fortune in the tea leaves. Scowling at the sunshine. Lighting up my pipe.
Me. No good boil. Up to no good in the wash house.
Me, Miss Pryce, in my pretty print housecoat, deft at the clothesline, natty as a jenny wren. Then pit-pat, back to my egg in its cosy, my crisp toast fingers, my homemade plum and butter pat.
Me, Polly Garter, under the washing line, giving the breast in the garden to my bonny new baby. Nothing grows in our garden, only washing and babies. And where's their fathers live, my love? Over the hills and far away. You're looking up at me now. I know what you're thinking, you poor little milky creature. You're thinking, you're no better than you should be, Polly. And that's good enough for me. Oh, isn't life a terrible thing? Thank God.
Now frying pans spit, kettles and cats purr in the kitchen. The town smells of seaweed and breakfast all the way down from Bayview, where Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard in smock and turban, big besom to engage the dust, picks at her starchless bread and sips lemon rind tea.
To Bottom Cottage, where Mr. Waldo, in bowler and bib, gobbles his bubble and squeak and kippers and swigs from the sauce bottle.
Mary Ann Sailors. Praises the Lord who made porridge.
Mr. Pugh remembers ground glass as he juggles his omelette.
Mrs. Pugh nags the salt cellar.
From Bynan Butcher's in Coronation Street, the smell of fried liver sidles out, with onions on its breath. And listen, in the dark breakfast room behind the shop, Mr. and Mrs. Bynan, waited upon by their treasure, enjoy between bites their every morning hullabaloo, and Mrs. Bynan slips the gristly bits under the tassel tablecloth to her fat cat.
She likes the liver, Ben.
She ought to do best. It's her brother's.
Do you hear that, Lily?
Yes, ma'am.
We're eating pusscat.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, you cat butcher.
It was doctored, mind.
What's that got to do with it?
Yesterday we had more.
Oh, Lily. Lily.
Monday otter, Tuesday shrews.
Oh.
Oh, Mrs. Bynan. He's the biggest liar in town.
Don't you dare say that about Mr. Bynan.
Everybody knows it, ma'am.
Mr. Bynum never tells a lie. Do you, Ben?
No, Bess. And now I'm going out after the corgis with my little cleaver.
Up the street in the Sailors' Arms, Sinbad Sailors, grandson of Mary Ann the Sailors, draws a pint in the sunlit bar. The ship's clock in the bar says 11:30, and 11:30 is opening time. The hands of the clock have stayed still at 11:30 for 50 years. It's always opening time in the Sailors' Arms.
Here's to me, Sinbad.
No good boy goes out in the dinghy Zanzibar. Ships the oars, drifts slowly in the Dabfil Bay, and, lying on his back in the unbuilt water, among crab's legs and tangled lines, looks up at the spring sky. I don't know who's up there, and I don't care.
He turns his head and looks up at Llaregipel and sees among green lathered trees the white houses of the strewn-away farms, where farm boys whistle, dogs shout, cows low, but all too far away for him or you to hear. And in the town, the shops squeak open. Mr. Edwards, in butterfly collar and straw hat at the doorway of Manchester House, measures with his eye the dawdlers by for striped flannel shirts and shrouds and flowery blouses, and bellows to himself in the darkness behind his eye.
I love Miss Pryce.
And sitting at the open window of Schooner House, blind Captain Cat hears all the mourning of the town.
That's willy-nilly knocking at Bayview. Rat-a-tat. Very soft. The knocker's got a kid glove on. Who sent a letter to Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard? Careful now. She swabs the front glassy. Every step's like a bar of soap. Mind your size 12s. That old Bessie would beeswax the lawn to make the birds slip.
Morning, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard.
Good morning, postman.
Here's a letter for you with stamped and addressed envelope enclosed all the way from Bilth Wells. A gentleman wants to study birds and can he have accommodation for 2 weeks and a bath? Vegetarian.
No.
You won't even know he was in the house, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard. He'd be out in the mornings at the bang of dawn with his bag of breadcrumbs and his little telescope.
Come home at all hours, covered with feathers. I don't want persons in my nice, clean rooms, breathing all over the chairs.
Cross my heart, he won't breathe.
And putting their feet on my carpets and sneezing on my china and sleeping in my sheets.
He only wants a single bed, Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard.
And back she goes to the kitchen to polish the potatoes.
Captain Cat hears willy-nilly's feet heavy on the distant cobbles.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's stopping at schoolhouse.
Morning, Mrs. Pugh. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard won't have a gentleman in from Bilth Wells because he'll sleep in her sheets.
Give me the parcel.
What's for Mr. Pugh, Mrs. Pugh?
Never you mind. What's inside it?
A book called Lives of the Great Poisoners.
That's Manchester House.
Morning, Mr. Edwards. Very small news. Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard won't have birds in the house. And Mr. Pugh's but a book now to do in Mrs. Pugh.
Have you got a letter from her?
Miss Pryce loves you with all her heart. Smelling her lavender today. She's down to the last of the elderflower wine, but the quince jam's bearing up and she's knitting roses on the doilies. Last week, she sold 3 jars of boiled sweets, pound of humbugs, half a box of jelly babies, and 6 coloured photos of Llaregib. Yours forever, then 21 X's.
Oh, willy-nilly, she's a ruby. Here's my letter. Put it into her hands now.
Mr. Waldo, hurry into the Sailors' Arms. Pint of stout with an egg in it. There's a letter for him.
It's another paternity summons, Mr. Waldo.
All the women are out this morning in the sun. You can tell it's spring. That's Mrs. Daybread 1 walking up the street like a jelly. Every time she shakes it, slap, slap, slap. Who's that? Mrs. Butcher Bynum with a pet black cat. It follows her everywhere, meow and all. High heels now. In the morning, too. Mrs. Rose Cottage's eldest, May. 17 and never been kissed. Ho-ho! Going young and milking under my window to the field where the nanny goes. She reminds me all the way. Can't hear what the girls are gabbing round the pump. Same as ever. Who's having a baby? Who's blacked whose eye? Seen Polly Garter giving a belly an airing? There should be a law. Seen Mrs. Bainan's new mauve jumper? It's her old grey jumper. Died. Who's dead? Who's dying? There's a lovely day. Oh, the cost of soap flakes.
Somebody's coming. Now the voices round the pump can see somebody coming. Hush. There's a hush. You can tell by the noise of the hush. It's Polly Garter.
Hello? Polly? Who's there?
Me, love.
That's Polly Garter. Hello, Polly, my love.
Can you hear the dumb goose hiss of the wives as they huddle and peck, or flounce at a waddle away? Who cuddled you when? Which of their gandering hubbies moaned in Milkwood for your naughty mothering arms and body like a wardrobe, love? Scrub the floors of the welfare hall for the Mothers' Union social dance. Your one mother won't wriggle her roly-poly bum or pat her fat little buttery foot in that wedding-ringed holy tonight. Though the waltzing breadwinners snatched from the cosy smoke of the sailors' arms will grizzle and mope.
Too late, cock. Too late.
For the town's half over with its mourning. The morning's busy as bees.
There's the clip-clop of horses on the sun-honeyed cobbles of the humming streets. Hammering of horseshoes, gobble, quack and cackle. Tom-tit twitter from the bird-ounce boughs, braying on donkey down. Bread is baking. Pigs are grunting. Chop goes the butcher. Milk churns bell. Tills ring. Sheep cough. Dogs shout. Saws sing. Oh, the spring whinny and morning moo from the clog-dancing farms. The gulls gab and rabble on the boat-bobbing river and sea, and the cockles bubbling in the sand. Scamper of sanderlings, curlew cry, crow caw, pigeon coo, clock strike, bull bellow, and the ragged gabble of the bear garden school as the women scratch and babble in Mrs. Organ Morgan's general shop, where everything is sold. Custard, buckets, henna, rat traps, shrimp nets, sugar, stamps, confetti, paraffin, hatchets, whistles.
Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard.
La-di-da.
Got a man in Builth Wells?
And he got a little telescope to look at birds.
Willy-nilly said.
Remember the first husband? He didn't need a telescope.
He looked at them undressing through the keyhole.
And he used to shout, tally-ho!
But Mr. Ogmore was a proper gentleman.
Even though he hanged his collie.
Seen Mrs. Butcher Bainan?
She said Butcher Bainan put dogs in the mincer.
Oh, he's pulling her leg.
Now don't you dare tell her that. There's a dear.
Or she'll think he's trying to pull it off and eat it.
There's a nasty lot live here when you come to think.
Hey, look at that no-good boyo now.
Too lazy to wipe his snout.
And going out fishing every day. All he ever brought back was a Mrs. Samuels.
Been in the water a week.
And look at Ocky Milkman's wife that nobody's ever seen.
He keeps her in the cupboard with the empties.
And think of Di Bread with 2 wives.
One for the daytime, one for the night.
Men are brutes on the quiet.
And in willy-nilly, the postman's dark and sizzling damp tea-coated misty pick-me kitchen where the spitting cat kettles throb and hop on the range. Mrs. Willy-nilly steams open Mr. Mogg Edwards's letter to Miss Mavanoy Pryce and reads it aloud to willy-nilly by the squint of the spring sun to the one sealed window running with tears, while the drugged, bedraggled hens at the back door whimper and snivel for the licorice, bog, black tea.
Beloved Mavanoy Pryce, my bride in heaven, I love you until death do us part, and then we shall be together forever and ever. A new parcel of ribbons has come from Carmarthen today, all the colours in the rainbow. I wish I could tie a ribbon in your hair, a white one, but it cannot be. I dreamed last night you were all dripping wet, and you sat on my lap as the Reverend Jenkins went down the street. I see you got a mermaid in your lap, he said, and he lifted his hat. He's a proper Christian. Not like Cherry Owen, who said you should have thrown her back, he said. Business is very poorly. Polly Garter bought 2 garters with roses, but she never got stockings, so what is the use, I say? Mr. Waldo tried to sell me a woman's nightie outsize. He said he found it and we know where. I sold a packet of pins to Tom the sailors to pick his teeth. If this goes on, I shall be in the workhouse. My heart is in your bosom and yours is in mine. God be with you always, my Vanna Pryce, and keep you lovely for me in his heavenly mansion. I must stop now and remain your eternal Mog Edwards.
Then a little message with a rubber stamp, shop at Mog's.
Mrs. Diebread 1 and Mrs. Diebread 2 are sitting outside their house in Donkey Lane. One darkly, one plumply blooming in the quick, dewy sun. Mrs. Diebread 2 is looking into a crystal ball, which she holds in the lap of her dirty yellow petticoat, hard against her hard, dark thighs.
Cross my palm with silver, out of our housekeeping money.
What do you see, Levy?
I see a feather bed with 3 pillows on it, and a text above the bed. I can't read what it says. There's great clouds blowing. Oh, now they've blown away. God is love, the text says.
That's our bed!
And now it's vanished. The sun's spinning like a top. Who's this coming out of the sun? It's a hairy little man with big pink lips. He got a wall eye.
It's Di! It's Diebread!
Shh! The feather bed's floating back. The little man's taking his boots off. He's pulling his shirt over his head. He's beating his chest with his fists. He's climbing into bed.
Go on, go on.
There's 2 women in bed. He looks at them both with his head cocked on one side. He's whistling through his teeth. Now he grips his little arms around one of the women.
Which one? Which one?
Oh, I can't see anymore. There's great clouds blowing again.
Ah, the mean old clouds.
The morning is all singing. The Reverend Eli Jenkins, busy on his morning call, stops outside the welfare hall to hear Polly Garter as she scrubs the floors for the Mothers' Union dance tonight.
Was Tom. He was strong as a bear and 2 yards long. I loved a man whose name was Dick. He was big as a barrel and 3 feet thick. And I loved a man whose name was Harry, 6 feet tall and sweet as a cherry. But the one I loved best, awake or asleep, was little Willie Wee, and he's 6 feet deep. Oh, Tom, Dick, and Harry were 3 fine men, and I'll never have such loving again. But little Willie Wee, who took me on his knee, little Willie Wee was the man for me. Now men from every parish round run after me and roll me on the ground. But whenever I love another man back, Johnny from the hill or Sailing Jack, I always think, as they do what they please, of Tom, Dick, and Harry, who were tall as trees. And most I think, when I'm by their side, of little Willie Wee, who drowned and died.
Praise the Lord, we are a musical nation.
In the blind-drawn, dark dining room of schoolhouse, dusty and echoing as a dining room in a vault, Mr. and Mrs. Pugh are silent over cold, grey cottage pie. Mr. Pugh reads as he forks the shroud meat in from Lives of the Great Poisoners. He has bound a plain brown paper cover round the book. Slyly, between slow mouthfuls, he side spies up at Mrs. Pugh, poisons her with his eye, then goes on reading. He underlines certain passages and smiles in secret.
Persons with manners do not read at table,
Says Mrs. Pugh. She swallows a digestive tablet as big as a horse pill, washing it down with clouded pea soup water.
Some persons were brought up in pigsties.
Pigs don't read at table, dear.
Bitterly, she flicks dust from the broken cruet. It settles on the pie in a thin gnat rain.
Pigs can't read, my dear.
I know one who can.
Alone in the hissing laboratory of his wishes, Mr. Pugh minces among bad vats and Jeroboams, tiptoes through spinneys of murdering herbs, agony dancing in his crucibles, and mixes, especially for Mrs. Pugh, a venomous porridge unknown to toxicologists, which will scald and viper through her till her ears fall off like figs, her toes grow big and black as balloons, and steam comes screaming out of her navel.
You know best, dear,
says Mr. Pugh, and quick as a flash he ducks her in rat soup.
What's that book by your trough, Mr. Pugh?
It's a theological work, my dear. Lives of the Great Saints.
I saw you talking to a saint this morning, Saint Polygata. She was martyred again last night.
But I always think as we tumble into bed of little Willie Wee who is dead, dead, dead.
The sunny, slow, lulling afternoon yawns and moons through the dozy town. The sea lolls, laps, and idles in with fishes sleeping in its lap. The meadow still as Sunday. The shut-eyed, tasseled bulls, the goat and daisy dingles nap happy and lazy. The dumb duck ponds snooze. Clouds sag and pillow on Llaregib Hill.
Persons with manners.
Snaps Mrs. Cold Pugh.
Do not nod at table.
Mr. Pugh cringes awake. He puts on a soft, soaping smile. It is sad and grey under his nicotine, egg-yellow, weeping walrus Victorian moustache, worn thick and long in memory of Dr. Crippen.
You should wait until you retire to your sty,
says Mrs. Pugh, sweet as a razor. His fawning, measly quarter smile freezes. Sly and silent he foxes into his chemist's den, and there, in a hiss and prussic circle of cauldrons and phials, brimful with pox and the Black Death, cooks up a fricassee of deadly nightshade, nicotine, hot frog, cyanide, and bat spit for his needling, stalactite hag and bed nag of a poker-backed nutcracker wife.
I beg your pardon, my dear,
he murmurs with a wheedle.
Captain Cat, at his window thrown wide to the sun and the clipped seas, he sailed long ago when his eyes were blue and bright, slumbers and voyages. Earringed and rolling, I love you, Rosie Probert, tattooed on his belly, he brawls with the broken bottles and the fug and babble of the dark dock bars. Roves with a herd of short and good time cows in every naughty port, and twines and souses with the drowned and blousy-breasted dead. He weeps as he sleeps and sails, and the tears run down his grog-blossomed nose. One voice of all he remembers most dearly as his dream buckets down.
Lazy early Rosie with a flaxen thatch, whom he shared with Tom Fred the donkeyman and many another seaman. Clearly, and near to him, speaks from the bedroom of her dust. In that gulf and haven, fleets by the dozen have anchored for the little heaven of the night. But she speaks to Captain Napping Cat alone. Mrs. Probert.
From Duck Lane Jack, quack twice and ask for Rosie.
Is the one love of his sea life that was sardined with women.
What seas did you see, Tomcat, in your sailoring days? What sea beasts were in the wavery green when you were my master?
I'll tell you the truth. Seas barking like seals. Blue seas and green. Seas covered with eels and mermen and whales.
What seas did you sail, old whaler? When, on the blubbery waves between Frisco and Wales, you were my bosun.
As true as I'm here, dear you tomcat's tart, you landlubber Rosie, you cozy love. My easy is easy, my true sweetheart. Seas green as a bean, seas gliding with swans in the seal-barking moon.
What seas were rocking my little deckhand? My favorite husband, in your sea boots and hunger. My duck, my whaler, my honey, my daddy. My pretty sugar sailor with my name on your belly. When you were a boy, long, long ago.
I'll tell you no lies. The only sea I saw was a seesaw sea, with you riding on it. Lie down. Lie easy. Let me shipwreck in your thighs.
Knock twice, Jack, at the door of my grave, and ask for Rosie.
Rosie Probert?
Remember her. She is forgetting. The earth which filled her mouth is vanishing from her. Remember me. I have forgotten you. I am going into the darkness of the darkness forever. I have forgotten that I was ever born.
Now the town is dusk. Each cobble, donkey, goose, and gooseberry street is a thoroughfare of dusk, and ceremonial dust, and night's first darkening snow, and the sleeper birds drift under and through the live dusk of this place of love. Llaregib is the capital of dusk.
Mrs. Ogmore Pritchard, at the first drop of the dusk shower, seals all her sea view doors, draws the germ-free blinds, sits erect as a dry dream on a high-backed hygienic chair, and wills herself to cold, quick sleep. At once, at twice, Mr. Ogmore and Mr. Pritchard, who all dead day long have been gossiping like ghosts in the woodshed, planning the loveless destruction of their glass widow, reluctantly sigh and sidle into her clean house.
You first, Mr. Ogmore. Oh, after you, Mr. Pritchard. No, Mr. Ogmore. You widowed her first.
And in through the keyhole, with tears where their eyes once were, they ooze and grumble.
Husbands.
She says in her sleep. There is acid love in her voice for one of the two shambling phantoms. Mr. Ogmore hopes that it is not for him. So does Mr. Pritchard.
I love you both.
Oh, Mrs. Ogmore. Oh, Mrs. Pritchard.
Soon it will be time to go to bed. Tell me your tasks, in order.
We must take our pajamas from the drawer marked pajamas.
And then you must take them off.
Down in the duskin town, May Rose Cottage, still lying in clover, listens to the nanny goat's chew, draws circles of lipstick round her nipples.
I'm fast. I'm a bad lot.
God will strike me dead. I'm 17. I'll go to hell.
She tells the goats.
You just wait. I'll sin till I blow up.
She lies deep, waiting for the worst to happen, as the goats champ and sneer.
Unmarried girls, alone in their privately bridal bedrooms, powder and curl for the dance of the world.
Mr. Waldor, in his corner of the Sailor's Arms, sings.
In Pembroke City when I was young, I lived by the castle keep. 6 a week was my wages for working for the chimbley sweep. 6 cold pennies he gave me, not a farthing more or less, and all the fare I could afford was parsnip gin and watercress. Sweep, sweep, chimbley sweep, I wept through Pembroke City, poor and barefoot in the snow, till a kind young woman took pity. Poor little chimbley sweep, she said, black as the ace of spades. Oh, nobody swept my chimbley since my husband went his ways. Come and sweep my chimbley, she sighed to me with a blush. Come and sweep my chimbley, bring along your chimbley brush.
And at the doorway of Bethesda House, the Reverend Jenkins recites to Llaregib Hill his sunset poem.
Every morning when I wake, dear Lord, a little prayer I make. Oh, please to keep thy loving eye on all poor creatures born to die. And every evening at sundown, I ask a blessing on the town. For whether we last the night or no, I'm sure is always touch and go. We are not wholly bad or good who live our lives under milkwood, and thou, I know, wilt be the first to see our best side, not our worst. Oh, let us see another day, bless us this night, I pray, and to the sun we all will bow and say goodbye, but just for now.
Blind Captain Cat climbs into his bunk. Like a cat, he sees in the dark. Through the voyages of his tears, he sails to see the dead.
Dancing Williams.
Still dancing.
Jonah Jarvis.
Still.
Rosie, with God. She has forgotten dying.
The dead come out in their Sunday best. Listen to the night breaking. Mr. Mogg Edwards and Miss Myfanwy Pryce, happily apart from one another at the top and the sea end of town, write their every night letters of love and desire. In the warm white book of Llaregib, you will find the little maps of the islands of their contentment.
Oh, my Mogg. I am yours forever.
And she looks around with pleasure at her own neat, never-dull room, which Mr. Mogg Edwards will never enter.
Come to my arms, Myfanwy.
And he hugs his lovely money to his own heart. And Mr. Waldo, drunk in the dusky wood, hugs his lovely Polygata under the eyes and rattling tongues of the neighbors and the birds. And he does not care. He smacks his live red lips. But it is not his name that Polygata whispers as she lies under the oak and loves him back. 6 feet deep, that name sings in the cold earth.
Who is dead, dead, dead.
The thin night darkens. A breeze from the creased water sighs the streets close under milk-waking wood. The wood whose every tree foot's cloven in the black, glad sight of the hunters of lovers. That is a God-built garden to Mary Ann sailors, who knows there is a heaven on earth. And the chosen people of his kind fire in Llaregib's land. That is the fair day farmhands, wantoning, ignorant chapel of bridesbeds. And to the Reverend Eli Jenkins, a green-leaved sermon on the innocence of men. The suddenly wind-shaken wood springs awake for the second dark time, this one spring day.
This night I pray, and to the sun we all will bow and say goodbye, but just for
Perfect. Got there. You got it. Thank you very much. Got there. Thank you.
I feel so self-conscious.
Oh, do we go again?
The wise men at their end, no dark is right, because their words had formed no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night.